Good morning mga katribu and welcome to another episode of Daily Tribune Straight Talk where we discuss current issues that matter to all Filipinos and to teach us something of valuable information. I am Komfie Manalo and we are live on Daily Tribune's Facebook page and Tribune Now on YouTube. Today our guest is Mr. Michael Ricafort, the Chief Economist of RCBC. Let us all welcome Mr. Ricafort. Good morning, sir. Thank you for granting our invitation to guest in Straight Talk kahit medyo short notice.
Hi, good morning and Happy New Year, Coffee, and to your team. Thank you for inviting
And
me
good morning, sir,
also.
and Happy New Year din sa inyo. And allow me to, fire off the first question. Sir, what will happen to the Philippine economy this 2023? What is our forecast for the country's economy?
But at least an economic growth of 6 to 6.5%.
Wow.
Because we're coming from a normalized pace already, no? Because we
Mm-hmm.
don't have lockdowns anymore since 2022 in terms of large lockdowns, and compared to the estimated GDP growth for 2022 is about 7.6% at least.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a bit higher than that because the economy reopened towards greater normalcy. But also mathematically, we came from a low base because there were pockets of lockdowns in
Mm-hmm.
2021. But of course, any growth is magnified by that, and the economy is practically, well, the missing elements they have reopened already, like tourism, especially foreign tourism since February, face-to-face schooling since August 22, and also the further pickup in domestic tourism. Because if you imagine 1 to 2 years ago, no,
Mm-hmm.
in 2020, 2021, well, there are many people who were just praying for the pandemic to achieve this state of having this
Mm-hmm.
freedom to work, freedom to do business, no more restrictions whatsoever. Uh, well, the biggest manifestation of which is that the optional wearing of face mask.
Yeah.
So imagine the hardest hit industry during the pandemic. They're already in the right recovery path,
Yeah. But
especially the MSMEs.
mm-hmm.
As So yeah, those are the biggest and those are the biggest leads. And if you look at the economic data, they're really doing well, no?
Yeah.
Like remittances are near record highs on a monthly basis and also on a yearly basis. BPO revenues also
Mm-hmm.
always new record highs despite the pandemic. It has been contrarian in the sense that
Yeah.
whenever there are global economic crises, uh, there's a tendency for BPOs to pick up because of the need for global companies to outsource and stay competitive. They tend to move jobs they cut
Mm-hmm.
costs, they move jobs from developed countries, unfortunately, to developing countries like the Philippines, because the Philippines is number 2 in the world
Mm-hmm.
for BPO, for OFW remittances. That's at least $35 billion per year,
Oh,
and
yeah.
still growing, moving towards 40 billion. It's the fourth biggest in the world after India,
India and
China,
China.
and Mexico. There was even a time more than 5 years ago uh, that the Philippines even overtook Mexico briefly.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine uh, that's uh, that's more than $35 billion per year. Then you add the BPO revenues. By the way, the Philippines is second biggest in the world after India. The Philippines is also number one for call center operations. So that's at least 30 billion for BPOs. So that you add the 35 billion at least from OFW remittances, you have a total of 65 billion. That's more than enough to cover the trade deficit of the country at more than 50 billion to
Yeah, actually, sir,
for 2 years.
I think that's the uniqueness of the Philippine economy because um, ever since I became a journalist, a finance journalist, I've experienced, or I've reported, covered several global recessions. But parang shielded ang Philippine economy. And of course, nabanggit nyo rin that one of the uniqueness why the Philippine economy is staying afloat is because of our BPO sector that is impacted positively by scenarios outside, no? Like ngayon merong gera sa Europe, and yun na, and even the IMF has predicted that one third of the global economy will experience recession next year. And for the Philippines to project or to forecast a 7% GDP growth in this year is really is is can be considered very significant. So how where will the 7% growth GDP growth of the Philippines be coming from when most of the global economies will experience recession this year?
Well, yeah, of course, that's true. That's one of the headwinds. But realistically, of course, we have seen the aggressive Fed rate hikes. Central banks have done their job well. Okay, they may have stepped on the brakes by raising interest rate, but that is really meant to better control, and curb inflation.
Mm-hmm.
In doing so, and well, at least, oh yeah, they've slowed down the economy a bit. Oil prices went down to near 1 year lows. Now it's at 80 levels. We started the war at 92. It's still lower, and it's even much lower compared to the peak of $130 last March 7. And last highs that we saw was $123 in the middle of
Mm-hmm.
July. So now, while it's almost back to where it started, it ended 2021 at 75. For a point, well, in late last year, we even saw it reaching near 70. No, it's even
Mm-hmm.
lower than the start of. So it's practically back to where it started. So because
Mm-hmm.
of the tightening of the central banks and raising interest rates, so they were able to slow things down. It's really by design to slow the economy
Mm-hmm.
in their quest to bring down elevated inflation, especially in the US and other developed countries and elsewhere around the world. So that's really some sort of a double-edged sword.
Mm-hmm.
That's the price. It's really by design because the mandate of the central banks around the world is price stability or stable inflation. They would
Mm-hmm.
do everything at their disposal. They use their toolkit to bring down elevated inflation because in the US it came from 40-year highs of new 40-year highs at 9.1% in June. But they
Mm-hmm.
were able to, the markets were kind of ecstatic since November 10 when it fell to an 11-month low of, initially at 7% levels. Now, the latest is 7.1%. So that's already the lowest since December of 2021, in nearly a year. So, well, of course, that's the most important data in the world, uh, because if inflation in the US eases further, so that's good news,
Mm-hmm.
meaning the Fed would be less aggressive in raising rates. They may be raising rates still. Well, we all know that the unintended consequence of this also was not only the risk of recession. We also saw the stronger dollar because there was a this dramatic increase in Fed funds rate from zero, practically zero in
Mm-hmm.
March. Now it's at a range of 4.25 to 4.5. So imagine the global fund shifted to the dollars. It's a global thing, no?
Mm-hmm.
If you notice, when inflation started to ease, imagine the exchange rate and many other currencies around the world, the dollar was stronger. So from 51, I started the year at 51 in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
It ended the year at 55.755. It came from a high of 59.
Yeah.
So it already is. In fact, that's a similar behavior in the other currencies in Asia. Uh, we saw a stronger dollar earlier in the year, but when inflation in the US started to ease, so that was the reason for them to profit take. And the dollar already corrected lower, and the Asian and ASEAN currencies, including the peso, already started to improve. But now, uh, but the Fed has been clear that they're not yet done in raising
Yeah.
rates. They would like to ensure that they may have to keep it elevated also, and keep it higher for longer to ensure that the easing of U.S. inflation would be sustained.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the most important data, as
Mm.
I mentioned, and uh, yeah, that's the reason why we're experiencing all these headaches, because it all started with a war,
Yeah. Yeah.
the Russia-Ukraine war. That's why oil prices suddenly surged, no? From 75 at the start of 2022, it went to as high as 130, and now it's down to 80. came to as low as a little over $70 late last year. So uh, it's really the why. That's why the central banks did their jobs in stepping on the brakes on the economy, slow things down. In their blueprint, the risk of recession is there based on, well, the assessment is 50% chance, but the Philippines and maybe some other Asian countries, no recession.
Yeah.
It's the likelihood is very low
Very
because
low.
what the economic data very strong. It's hard to imagine well, the last time we had the recession was during the hard lockdowns, and
Yeah.
that's about it. What's the technical definition of recession? That's two consecutive quarters of quarter-on-quarter declines. So it only happened during the hard lockdowns
Yeah.
in
Like in 2021.
2020.
Mm.
Yeah, so that's unlikely to happen anymore.
Yeah.
Because now the economy is reopened towards greater normalcy, no more restrictions. We're free. Everybody's free to work, to do business. We're experiencing already pickup in sales, in income, in earnings, and also more jobs being created, more livelihood. Of course, definitely, yeah, we have to be patient with other industries, but they're in the right recovery path. Like
Yeah.
manufacturing is among the highest, the fastest in 4 years.
Mm.
Other than the near record high remittances, near record high BPO revenues, exports at new record high.
Yeah.
The trade deficit already started to narrow because of the global oil prices and commodities already corrected lower. It's the narrowest in more than a year. Look at well, many other indicators. Look at employment data, 95.5%. That's matching the record high.
Mm-hmm.
And unemployment rate, matching the record low at 4.5%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it may be contended that of course it's the quality of jobs that if you look at the
Mm-hmm.
underemployment rate, it may not be as strong as the other metrics, but it's in the right recovery path. We may have to be patient because we just recovered from the pandemic, and well, the basic elements, for instance, for foreign tourism, we have yet to see the large foreign tourists, say from China and from other
US. Yeah.
Asian
And new markets.
countries.
Yes.
We have yet to see that, but it's in the right recovery path. It's doing well. It's recovering well. No, we
Yeah.
have seen the figures,
Mm.
encouraging figures. Like 2.6 million foreign visitors
Foreign visitors. Yes.
already.
So
Yeah,
yes, Sir Michael. Yeah, all data is pointing to ano, all data are pointing to a good direction, and all indicators are showing that the Philippine economy is on its way to a good recovery. And talking about inflation, Fed rate hike, and of course the current rate hike, of course the biggest ammunition, the primary ammunition of central banks across the globe to arrest or to stop elevated inflation is to increase interest rates. And in the Philippines, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas has increased the interest rate to 5.5% or 2.5% this year. This is one of the highest in the region. Do you you also mentioned that the Feds have indicated they are not yet done increasing their interest rates. Will the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, do you think, maintain its 5.5% interest rates, or will it bow to pressures from the Feds once it increase its interest rate again this year?
well, that's a very important question because the BSP, the local policy rates, are expected to move in line with the Fed rates.
Mm.
We have seen that already in recent months because the policy priority of the administration and the economic team is to lower inflation. And the one way to lower inflation is to have a stable currency because
Mm-hmm.
the weaker peso, actually the peso still in 2022, the dollar still went up by 9.3%. So that effectively, yeah, imagine 9.3%.
Yes.
That's close to the inflation rate of 8% because
Mm-hmm.
that's adding to the cost of imports, no?
Mm-hmm.
Due to the stronger dollar. But that's already improved. When it was at 59, it was almost 16%. So
Mm-hmm.
it was practically nearly cut by half, no, the depreciation. That's why we already saw some improvement. But of course, it's still net up by 9%. But it's still better than 19% when it was at 59.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, because we import oil, we import wheat, we also capital equipment, name it. We even import some agricultural products like rice, sugar, fish, and so on, corn, and well, we have seen reduced tariffs, the continuation of reduced tariffs extended for even pork and meat products due to the ASF, and uh, meaning if you are importing, we pay in dollars. So
Mm-hmm.
it's because of the strong dollar worldwide. It's not just us. We're aligned with the region. Whenever we import, including oil, we have to pay. Well, for 2022, we have to, as it ended more at 9.3% higher. That's the that's the oil bill that the country needs to pay more
Mm-hmm.
on top of the changes in prices. And we all know it's a globe. We have experienced higher prices, inflation around the world, no?
Mm-hmm.
So so that's adding into it. So it's very important to have a stable currency, peso exchange rate, and they have done a great job in doing so,
Mm-hmm.
because uh, the local authorities have a good track record for 18 good years,
Mm-hmm.
from 2004, 2005. They were able to cap it at 56.45. It's now lower. Now it's doing at around 55.87. It's still lower than
Mm-hmm.
the 18-year cap. But of course, in between, it reached as low as 40 in
Mm-hmm.
around 2013. No? So, but nonetheless, they were able to cap it there, no, because of the various measures. So, the measures to stabilize the exchange rate enabled to fulfill the price stability mandate and better manage inflation because of the impact of on importation costs and prices
Mm-hmm.
whenever there's the dollar goes up versus the peso. So yeah, they have done a good job, and looks like they have their policy to there. They were able to, and the peso, more important, is also aligned with the rest of ASEAN, the other ASEAN and Asian currencies. So uh, they would do everything. Again, they have all those measures. They have been very transparent in saying that they have been in the market. Yes, they have been raising interest rates. Yes, to the point of possibly matching again the Fed funds rate. Yes, and able to stabilize the currency so that with because if the interest differential is comfortable, so yeah, so it would help stabilize the peso exchange rate,
Yeah.
and among other many other measures. So that goes hand in hand. If you have a stable currency, that would also help stabilize inflation in turn.
Mm-hmm.
So going forward, they have a good track record, and prospectively, yeah, the odds would still be in their favor as long as the regional currencies are behaving. Most especially now that U.S. inflation is easing, the Fed may be, yeah, about they have already raised rates, but by a lesser extent already, smaller Fed rate hikes. So the estimated peak, well, the Fed rates right now is at 4.25 to 4.5. So the estimated peak for by the Fed officials by next year is 5.1. So they're almost done.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're gonna bring it closer to 5%, therefore the local policy rates would move towards 6%. So that's a 1% differential, in able
Mm-hmm.
to maintain the interest differential in favor of the peso, and
Yeah.
make the peso also relatively attractive by matching the Fed rate hikes, as we have seen it in recent
Mm-hmm.
months. So they may still, well, the likelihood of adopting the same tack may still be there.
Yeah.
So enable to be consistent about it. No?
Yeah, double
And
edged talaga yung the weak peso is really a double edged sword. On one hand, the Filipino dollar earners have more money. In fact, like you've mentioned, the Philippine peso started at 51 pesos to the dollar in 2022, and it reached up to almost 70 pesos per dollar. So the peso weakened by as much as 13% this year, and now it's at 11% weaker because at 55 to the dollar. But compared to the inflation, which even if it reaches 8.6%, I mean, more people, the dollar earners still have more money this month than they have the the 2022, the year 2022 started. But at the same time naman, we have to pay more for our imports because we're paying in the dollar. So for this year, what's the inflation forecast for 2023, sir?
Well, inflation is expected to improve.
Mm-hmm.
The estimate for for 2022 around 5.8%. But that's kind of high, no? It already reached a 14-year high of
Mm-hmm.
8% last November. That's
Mm-hmm.
consistent with the local policy rate. When it
Mm-hmm.
was raised to 5.5%, that's also the highest in 14 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's back to 2008 levels, no, for both inflation and the key interest rates. Now, inflation would start to ease already because of
Mm-hmm.
the higher base effect, especially the anniversary of the war.
Mm-hmm.
The war between Russia and Ukraine started February 24, so we have to watch out for that. The peak for oil was 130 on
Mm-hmm.
March 7th. So therefore, inflation is year-on-year change. So we're already starting from a higher base, at least as far as global oil prices are concerned and other global commodities. So year-on-year inflation, not only here in the Philippines but around the world, will start to ease already gradually. But of course, it may not be that fast,
Mm-hmm.
but it would be gradual because the anniversary of the wage hike of at least 6% in the Philippines was in June to
Mm-hmm.
July for the various regions. The anniversary of the fare hikes, of course, it came from pre-pandemic low of 9 pesos for the jeepney fares, the minimum jeepney fares. It was gradually raised to 10 pesos in June, then to 11 pesos in July, and finally 12 pesos come October.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to watch out for June, July, the anniversary for the wage hike and the transport fare hikes. And we would already see we were coming from a high base, and uh, everything else followed. When wages were increased, when transport fares were increased, the prices of other goods and services also increased. No,
Mm-hmm.
well, many businesses and industries, they passed on the higher cost to consumers by way of higher selling prices by then. We all know what happened to many commodities like sugar, but of course, sugar is also based on weather. We have seen weather disruptions even the latter part of 2021, no? And that adversely impacted on the
Mm-hmm.
supplies, no? It's demand supply, eh. That's why we saw the increase in sugar prices to more than 100 pesos per kilo. But although we have seen that being stabilized also in recent months, and of course, they have passed on the higher cost of production, like the fertilizer, because it's based on petroleum. Triggered, it's all triggered by the war, the Russia-Ukraine war. All this higher gasoline, we all felt that higher gasoline, higher diesel prices, higher the other commodities like fertilizer, the inputs, and of course the peso also added to that, to the inflation. So yeah, that's why the prices of other goods and services in the economy, the so-called second round effects, we also
Mm-hmm.
felt that, no? And even latter part of the year, you saw, well, like for onions, no? Because the storm damage also, there are unique factors on the demand supply balance. There were storm damage, series of storms that damaged the crops, and that resulted to losses for the planters, the farmers, and that led to reduced supplies and higher prices. But if you look at it well, you look at the developed countries, the price of onion is just 100 pesos to 200 pesos. And I've been monitoring that even prior to the
Mm-hmm.
war,
Mm-hmm.
maybe at least for the past year, no? Since the latter part of 2021, it was steady in developed countries at around 100 pesos per
Mm-hmm. Per
kilo.
kilo.
Say the higher, that's the average for developed countries already.
Mm-hmm.
Considering in developed countries, the cost of labor is higher, the cost of living is much higher, the wages higher, etc., and so on. Uh, so that's why it's very high during the holiday season when we saw it, no? So, but of course, that's supply and demand. And it's really, we have seen that in other commodities like chili, if you remember, diba? The
Mm-hmm.
sile. It was a few years back. It was also it reached the prices was really high
Ridiculous.
also at some point, no? So because demand and supply, the typhoons,
Mm-hmm.
no? But of course, the natural tendency, if the price is high and the opportunity is there, so there would be many planters and farmers who would take that opportunity
Mm-hmm.
and give it a few months, if the weather permits, no? Maybe the last time we had the disruption, especially in northern Luzon, was during the time of Karding,
Mm-hmm.
the storm of, as well as the other one after Karding, no?
Mm-hmm.
So so, but those series of storms, no, around the towards the fourth quarter,
Yeah.
especially around October, November, and if the weather would be more cooperative now, no disruptions, no storm damage, we're moving already to closer to the to dry
Harvest season.
season,
Yeah, yeah.
the
Yeah, yeah,
summer season.
yeah. Mhm.
So
I
let's see.
mm,
Yeah, give it a few months, and
mm.
the crops would be there, no? And well, of course, higher prices that would present or the opportunities would present themselves
Yeah, I
for
agree
the
with you.
farmers.
Because even the Department of Agriculture is projecting that in coming days the prices of red onion will stabilize to around 85 to 100 pesos per kilo because the harvest season will start, I think, late January up to March. So yeah, I think I agree with that. And I having grew up in a province, actually in Nueva Ecija in Bungabon, where we used to plant where we still plant onion there. I think the prices of onion will start stabilizing in the coming months because or in the coming days because the harvest season of onion will start in late January up to March. So there'll be more supply in the market. And you also discussed earlier that the our policymakers have been doing a great job in stabilizing the local currency or the Philippine peso. And how will you see the Philippine peso perform against the US dollar this year and against regional currencies?
Well, at least we have seen the trend already. No? After the strong dollar last year, it was kind of excessive, although it already corrected lower because it was really triggered by the war
Mm-hmm.
that led to higher inflation, higher oil prices, higher commodity prices. But they already started to stabilize and corrected lower already, no? And among 1 year lows for many commodities like oil, for wheat,
Mm-hmm.
and like even metals, it even came to a point that they went down to 2 year lows. And well, of course, we have to consider. Well, again, if you look at it very well, the reopening of narrative, the reopening of the economy towards greater normalcy, that effectively overshadowed the risk factors like
Mm-hmm.
higher prices, higher inflation, and also the higher interest rates, higher borrowing costs, and also uh, why am I saying this?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, well, we have seen the resilience of the other economic data. Because now, of course, there's always a challenge because 1 to 2 years ago, when there were lockdowns, 2020, 2021, the challenge then was the lack of, well, some job losses, temporary
Mm-hmm.
and permanent closure of businesses. There were restrictions, no foreign tourism, no children are not going to school because of the restrictions. So there were many businesses that rely on those industries. They were hard. They were the hardest hit.
Mm-hmm.
No, there was lack of jobs, lack of livelihood, lack of for businesses, reduced sales,
Mm-hmm.
reduced income. So now the challenge is different. We have seen the reopening already. They have reopened the missing elements of the recovery already fulfilled. Many people were just praying for this 1 to 2 years ago. Now we already achieved this state.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Everything we're free. We're free to travel. Everything else is almost back to normal. We're just waiting. Maybe the other missing element is that we don't see the large tourists from China yet because they
Mm-hmm.
have restrictions, but they're reopening also.
Yeah.
Actually, that's all, going forward. Those are, well, other than of course, the higher prices still, but the year-on-year inflation would ease. Interest rates are still relatively high. It's much expensive to borrow now, so it's slowing things
Mm-hmm.
down. uh, Everybody else is feeling it, no? The consumers that would like to borrow for auto loans, housing loans, for the businesses and industries. So it's much more expensive now to borrow for
Mm-hmm.
new investments, expansion plans. But look at it. Look at loan growth. The fastest in nearly 4 years, no? The
Mm-hmm.
fastest loan growth at 14% year on year. But
Wow.
of course, it came from lower base. But look at non-performing loan ratio.
Mm-hmm.
Already the lowest in more than 2 years. So it only goes to show that the ability to pay by the borrowers improved when the economy reopened towards greater
Yeah, yeah,
normalcy.
I'd
So
agree.
yeah, so it's really overshadowing all those factors. Okay, there's the risk of recession in the U.S., but that is also being well, the Philippine economy is resilient. It's
Yeah,
overshadowing that also. It's highly unlikely to have a recession again,
yeah, and
considering that the
mm,
yes. So
yeah,
yeah,
and with the reopening of the travel restrictions, and of course the arrival, the increasing arrival of foreign tourists in the country, and we now the Department of Tourism has reported that we received 2.6 million tourists in 2022, and they expect the numbers to grow further. So that would bring in more dollars to the country, and of course tourists are here to spend. They spend money. They don't visit a destination just to, just to either run or sleep, but they actually here to spend their dollars. So that would bring in more dollars to the coffers or to the economy.
yeah, true. Because yeah, that would be a future source of growth. But we
Mm-hmm.
have to also recognize, yeah, the growth areas, yeah, there's still great promise to that because
Mm-hmm.
even before the pandemic, the Philippines has yet to also catch up with our neighbors. No?
Mm-hmm.
Similar to foreign direct investments, we have yet to the country has yet to really catch up because there some of our ASEAN neighbors and Asian neighbors, they have much higher tourism arrivals,
Mm-hmm.
foreign tourism arrivals, tourism revenues. They also have much higher foreign direct investment. So that's an opportunity going
Mm-hmm.
forward. That's also an opportunity. Yeah, that's a potential source of growth, additional productivity for the country, more jobs. If you generate if the country will be able to attract more tourists, that would mean more jobs, more revenues, more livelihood, more business, and greater growth for the country. More business,
Mm-hmm.
and same goes with FDIs, foreign investments. That's why it's also important now to really have good diplomatic relations, good business ties with the different countries, the major sources of foreign direct investments, enabled to attract more foreign direct investments. It's also very important. So that's another source of growth, and that will create more jobs. Because why is that important? The Philippines is the 12th largest population in the world, at
Mm-hmm.
110 million.
Billion.
So imagine the ranking of the Philippine economy is around 37 to 38 in the world,
Mm-hmm.
largest in terms of the largest economy. And there's still room for it to go up. The demographics are attractive.
Mm-hmm.
The Philippines is one of the last major economies to reach the demographic dividend or demographic sweet spot. Of course, it's not that perfect, but we have to note that Japan was 50 years earlier. What's
Mm-hmm.
demographic dividend, by the way? That's more than half of the population already working age. Our population is 110, more than 110 million. So around more than 50 million are already working age. So if
Mm-hmm.
countries that reach those that so-called demographic sweet spot, they experience relatively higher growth rates of
Yeah.
around as high as 67% per year
Mm-hmm.
for the next 10 years or so. And we have seen that already even prior to the pandemic, growth of at least 6% from
Yeah, yeah, the
2012 to
average GDP.
2019
Yeah.
because of the demographics. Which, of course, it's not that perfect. But what's really important there, if you are to really be circumspect about it, it's also important. Yeah, our population is young, 25 years old, but it's also, well, it's very promising for countries with
Mm-hmm.
large populations, but provided that especially the children are educated,
Yeah.
so that they'll become productive. There will be
Mm-hmm.
more jobs. They will have income. They will have spending power. They will start families. They will purchase homes,
Mm-hmm.
vehicles. They will take out loans to finance those. They would start families. They would send their children to school. They would spend. They would travel. They would
There would be a
invest.
cycle of income generation and spending habits.
Provided the
Yeah,
population, they
yeah, yeah.
really
Because
become productive. They really
productive,
study well,
and
especially
you also mentioned that you also suggested that the Philippines has a lot of catching up with our neighbors in terms of FDIs and attraction of additional tourist arrivals. So how do you see or assess the current administration? Is it doing the right policies to attract more tourists and FDIs to the country?
I think they know what to do, especially the economic team. Being competent, credible, and experienced, they have a good track record. So the foundations are there. So
Mm-hmm.
they know what to do. Even at the start, since the SONA, they identified all the opportunities. For instance,
Mm-hmm.
of course, the challenges, the good prices, the need to, of course, increase local supplies. So there's a need to further boost the productivity of agriculture for food security, so that there will be more supply of agricultural products in the country by mechanization, improving the irrigation facilities, storage. Well, right now, because if there are bumper harvests, it's also important to have storage facilities instead of being wasted if there's so much. Let's see now, for instance, for onions, if there would be if a lot of farmers would take opportunity, there will be excess supply at some point. That's the same. Well, we've seen that in tomatoes, right?
Mm-hmm.
But tomatoes are more perishable, so it's very important to have storage facilities enabled to prepare for lean times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the logistics, of course, it's increasing the yields per hectare, especially the likes of rice and other crops and agricultural products, higher yielding seeds, also mechanization, because there's so much opportunity. Look at our neighboring countries; they're net exporting countries, and they're able to produce at lower cost because they have done those, they've taken those seriously, and yeah, it may have been neglected in recent years because it came to a point that it was even cheaper to import. But
Mm-hmm.
of course, food security is important. We have seen that at the start of the pandemic and also during the war. Some countries are trying to secure their supplies for their local citizens first before they export. So
Mm-hmm.
that's very important. And you have to acknowledge that agriculture employs nearly 25% of total
Mm-hmm.
workers in the country. And they're situated largely in the countryside in rural areas. And there's poverty incidence in those areas. If the productivity of agriculture is boosted, that's going to translate to more jobs, more income, most especially, and that would alleviate more people out of poverty. Same goes for manufacturing. Instead of always importing, just like look at our neighboring countries. They're net exporting countries also for agriculture, for manufacturing, and it's very compelling for the global companies to locate in the Philippines because of the large market. Imagine the 12th largest population in the world, 110 million young population, and just coming from the demographic sweet spot. So there's still great potential. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it may not be that perfect, but it's still growing at a decent rate. No, there's still poverty, yes, but of course there's a need for them to really become the need for that large population to become productive at
Yeah.
some point in the future to enable for them to generate
Yeah.
more incomes, more
Talking about
livelihood, more
yeah,
jobs.
and talking about food security and protecting our agricultural sector, so providing them sufficient support. And we can, like you said, we can achieve this by preparing for the lean months, like establishing or creating more cold storage facilities and ensuring the supply chain by also strengthening the logistics side of the supply chain. But uh, the father of our current president, the senior Marcos, he initiated this Kadiwa program, which, if you will take a look at it, is a complete supply chain process. So it has cold storage and is farm to table, almost farm to table distribution of products. That's why it can sell produce, agricultural produce at very very cheap prices. And now the young Marcos, the Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos, is trying to revive that program now under this current setup, while protecting or supporting or ensuring food security and providing cheap agricultural products to the consumers, while it benefits the consumers and of course the farmers. I'm sure that it will also benefit the farmers and ensuring food security as a whole. Will the Kadiwa program negatively impact or compete with traders or the private sector? Because that will eliminate practically middlemen or the trading sector. So do you support reviving the Kadiwa program as it was originally envisioned by the father?
I think
Or
well, that has been the move, even in previous administration, especially in reaching the poorest of the poor.
mhm,
That's a way of cushioning also, no? Especially now, whenever there are price pressures, that's one way, no? That's one of the interventions,
mhm,
especially to, well, it's really meant for them, eh. That's not really. Also, we have seen some variants of which, of those programs in previous administration to really reach out to them, because that's one way to mitigate. Uh, well, that's one way to ease the or a relief for the higher prices of goods and services or higher inflation lately. And I think that's one of the safety nets, the
mhm,
social safety nets, especially for the poorest of the poor. Enable to ensure that yeah, uh, but yeah, it would definitely complement, and that
mhm,
would also really bring to the fore the need for, well, the urgency for food security. No, yeah, as an alternative, it would complement, not necessarily compete. No, but that would also help ensure that prices won't really deviate so much
mhm,
from I know, maybe not, especially not too high compared to
mhm,
what's really reasonable and based on the demand supply dynamics. So that's one way, no? That's one of the interventions that may be needed, and that's that at some point that's also effective
mhm,
as an alternative. So even competition would also consider that, no?
mhm,
Uh, well, hello, yeah, but yeah, because it would enhance everything,
mhm,
as you pointed out, from the production side, the distribution. It's the whole supply chain approach for everything. So it would make everything more efficient, and that would even the linkages. No, it
mhm,
would facilitate the linkages with the producers, with the farmers, eliminating layers and make it more profitable for them. That would be the bottom line, and that would translate to cheaper or lower prices
mhm,
for the general public. So the objectives are really good and noble, so to
mhm.
speak.
So, Sir Michael, much that we would like to talk to you more. Unfortunately, we are running out, and of course, we don't want to take more of your time because because you have another appointment and you have another interview in a few minutes. So, we will give you the floor and to give us or give our viewers your projections for 2023.
Well, for this year, economic growth or GDP would already normalize
Mm-hmm.
at least 6 to 6.5%. That's decent. That's still decent.
Mm-hmm.
No more low base effects, and that's already consistent with that's still among the fastest in the region, by the way. And then inflation would already start to ease on a year-on-year basis because of the high base effect. It's gonna go down to around 4.5 to a little over 5% from 5.8% in 2022. So yeah, we would still see near record highs for OFW remittances. It's still growing. BPO revenues on a yearly basis, the industry association is still bullish about it. From at least $30 billion per year, it would well, the industry association in 6 years would they're even seeing as high as $50 billion per year, and
Mm-hmm.
that would still generate additional 1 million jobs from the current 1.4 million jobs. Considering that 18 years ago, in 2004, it only came from 100,000 jobs. Now it's 1.4 million. It's going to go up to 2.4 million in 6 years. The BPO revenues only came from $1 billion per
Mm-hmm.
year on a recurring basis. It's more than 30 billion now, and it's going to towards $50 billion per year.
Wow.
So exports still expected, well, just came from record highs and still expected to do the same. Although, yeah, there may be headwinds on the risk of recession, 50% chance in the US. That's going to slow things down because of the high interest rates, the Fed funds rate. And, but it's still resilient because there are still parts of the global supply chain with with some disruption. So the exporters are trying to fill that one up, and we have seen it in the figures, even on electronics. There even came to a point that there were shortages of electronic computer chips on some vehicles, even before the war.
Mm-hmm.
So since the pandemic, actually, and in many other products. So that's filling the void, no, that's being filled in. Uh, yeah, of course, oil prices among 1 year lows. That's helping lower inflation, because it all started with higher prices of oil and other
Mm-hmm.
global commodities as triggered by the war. Of course, the Russia-Ukraine war is still there. There won't be any recession in the Philippines because of the resiliency. If you look at all practically the data that we just mentioned, and the infrastructure spending would still be at least 5% of GDP. That's also laid out by the administration. The foundations are there. Yeah, they're also addressing the challenges like the need to bring down the debt to GDP ratio from the 17-year high of 63.7%, enabled to bring it down to the below the international threshold of 60%, enabled to maintain the favorable credit ratings of 1 to 3 notches above the minimum
Mm-hmm.
investment grade. So that has been sustained since the pandemic, because the debt to GDP ratio came from a position of strength. That's
Mm-hmm.
the in recent memory, the lowest at 39.6% prior to the pandemic. Of course, it ballooned during the pandemic because
Yeah.
everybody else around the world, the governments needed to borrow and able to finance the financial assistance and the various COVID programs. And of course, the lockdowns reduced the tax revenue collection, but that's a thing of the past. Economies have reopened, the tax revenues are picking up, the various COVID programs, the financial assistance. Of course, there's reduced need for that already because no more lockdowns, at least since last year. So, and prospectively, that's a policy priority. So they know what to do. The foundations are there. And it's like planting the seeds, waiting for it to bear fruit, and eventually uh, uh, reaping the
The
fruits of
benefits.
those
Yeah.
what's being laid out, because the foundations are there. They know what to do. It's the role of the government is to encourage and create an environment that's more conducive to business, create more investments, generate more jobs, like of course boost tourism, boost the productivity of agriculture, manufacturing. And by the way, manufacturing accounts for nearly 20% of total jobs. That's on top of, well, agriculture, almost 25%. That's more than 40% of total jobs. So imagine if those two sectors are the productivity of
Mm-hmm.
which boosted further. Yeah, that's alternative to importation, increasing local supplies. And that would definitely help the country achieve the middle income country status in the coming years. And that would also try to help alleviate the poverty. And most importantly, it's the education of, well, we all know the budget allocation for education has always been the biggest for many
Mm-hmm.
years. So it's very important to sustain that. Because that would be that's very important in able to reap the benefits of the demographic sweet spot, majority of the population working age, and now we have very young population. So that would really help that would help secure the prosperity of the country for the coming years and for the coming generation. So, yeah, that's why it all starts and ends there.
Yeah.
Uh, you have good foundation, you have good healthcare. Uh, that's very much summed up by the budget allocation, the improvements in infrastructure, so that there would be it would also help attract more and foreign direct investments, more tourists, because that would make everything more efficient. You have more ports, more airports, you have better facilities, more toll roads, train systems, uh, and so on. That would improve the flow of workers, tourists, goods and services, especially exports and imports.
Yeah.
So it would improve the overall productivity. It would create new frontier areas, more residential areas, commercial areas, industrial areas. So yeah, it would create more township projects, especially for BPOs, because they tend to save more if
Yeah.
they also locate in the countryside,
Yeah.
in the key cities and with the university towns where there's supply of labor, and it would create a lot of economic activities. That's one of the benchmarks there, the township projects, where there
Mm-hmm.
would be office spaces, BPOs being located in key cities outside Metro Manila.
Yeah.
So that would also be one of the major catalysts. New airports also,
Mm-hmm.
new other infrastructure projects. So those are the foundations, and then the tourists will come, and then there's a conducive and more conducive environment for business. Encourage them, both local businesses, foreign direct investments, and so on, and that would create more jobs. And yeah, that's the role of government actually, to create that more conducive
Opportunities.
environment.
Yeah. Yeah, thank
Yes.
you so much, Sir Michael Ricafort, the RCBC Chief Economist. Thank you for your bullish and optimistic forecast for the Philippine economy. That you heard it right from Mr. Ricafort himself. There will be no recession this year. The foundations are very strong. The economy is sound, so we can sleep soundly tonight. Thank you very much again, Sir Michael Ricafort, for gracing us with your presence today.
Thank you so much, Coffee and Daily Tribute. Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much again. And thank you mga katribu for tuning in. Watch Straight Talk live every Tuesday at 10 a.m. on Daily Tribune's Facebook page and Tribune Now on YouTube. Once again, I am Komfie Manalo and this has been Straight Talk.
Nasa kamay mo ang swerte, ngunit hindi ito isang laro na para lang sa iyo. Dahil bukod sa pag-asang maging milyonaryo, ang pagtangkilik mo sa loto at ipapang produkto ng PCSO ay nakakalikom ng pondo para sa mga programang pangkalusugan, tulong at serbisyong medikal at kawang-gawa.
Lahat ng minimithi makakamtan sa PCSO.
Welcome ka dito sa SM. Come as you are. Mahilig ka man sa pabago-bago o sa paikot-ikot. Yung nag-a-adulting or parenting. Ikaw na kulot, white-haired, purple-haired, kayong magkaibigan na nagkaibigan. Buong barkada. Yung gusto mo, chill lang. Or gawin yung feel mo lang. We know you're changing. So we're changing with you. Come on in. We're all in. At SM, you're always welcome here.